Good evening. We are picking up roughly where we left off last week. Of note is that in the intervening time, the right trigger on my controller broke. So if the game randomly zooms in, like that, it's because the right trigger is more or less firing at random. Luckily, right bumper is the one that actually does things, so hopefully it'll be fine. Also, congratulations, Jigstraw, on being first. Okay, I am once more looking for a Colossus. Given that this is where a previous Colossus was, I think it's probably not here. So I'm gonna go out and adventure and explore. Mike, you were there for it first? Yeah, but you weren't first to redeem the redeem. Yeah, I've been rotated. Also, it seems like my chat thing is slightly broken. It should be cropping lines about a third of the way to where it currently is. So hopefully I remember to fix that after stream today, because that is a thing I will need to fix. Yeah, it does seem like I want to get across here. I'm pretty sure if I fall down here I die instantly. What are the odds that I can go over top like that? Probably not high. Ooh, birds. Hacker's like, okay, we're here the woods, you can ride me again. I also low-key forget what the hint for this Colossus was. But maybe if I go over there, I'll be able to find it. Which I think is going to require basically going all the way back round, but so be it. This is fine. Unless I can go like this. On an unrelated note, oh, in the go to the south, with that girl wearing apple-bottom jeans and the boots with the fur. Well, I'm not wearing pants right now, so it can't be me. Yeah, just something to yap about while traversing. Look up for in the tail too. Yeah, something to yap about. So I actually started learning Godot, and I also started playing Factorio. I've been going super hard on Blender and just got a little bit burnt out. And so rather than continuing to force it, which hasn't been going anywhere for quite some time, I decided, okay, let's redirect some of that energy for a bit. and both have been very fun. Highly recommend. Godot's actually a lot easier than I thought it was. Their documentation even has like a thing that's like, hey, come here if you're like new to Godot. First timers welcome. We'll walk you through like setting up a project and everything. And I did that, and it was actually really, really, really intuitive once I knew what was happening. Also, I spy a white lizard. Or white-tailed gecko, rather. Like, I do have a programming background, which does make life a little bit easier on that front, but... like, the documentation's pretty good. There we go. Long. This is either one of the worst Colossi, or one of the only ones that you think is actually super well designed. Is it because you don't remember which one it is exactly, or is it because you don't know which way you're going with it? Like, mixed feelings. I'm certain that I'll develop an opinion. Last side battle, I usually want to start with the bow out. How many have I killed? I think I've killed 13, maybe 14. Yeah. Yeah, so out of 16. This is the one you hate? Yeah. I will try to give it a fair shot. Between the eyes. Like, fear not, I will be killing it. If people came along and killed the things that I hated, I'd sure be happy about it. Just need to find some sunlight. You don't think that this one or the next one are bad, they're just an exercise in patience? Oh, yeah. Patience isn't exactly one of my strong suits. I think I found the Colossus. Oh. Is this going to be one where I have to, like, trick him into stabbing the ground and then climbing up the sword? Usually when they have a weapon, I have to climb the weapon. Since you can damage them very slightly with the bow, couldn't I technically kill a Colossus? You can bring them down to 1 HP, but ultimately you are 100% obligated to stab a glyph with the Sword of Ancients. You can get 99% of the way there, but the last bit you have to climb the Colossus and shank them. You were trying to trick me into it? Oh, yeah. I might be able to climb his leg if I get him to try and step on me. Not like that. Nuh-uh, I don't want to be stepped on. Well, I guess it depends. If somebody's like putting some pressure on like my spine to try and crack it, like I feel like I'd be on board with that. But like in a general sense, not so much. Okay, left palm. Ow, my bones. It looks like there's gonna be a sigil on his shoulder or chest. Right about there. I'm in danger. Is it both hands? Something around there is focusing the beam. It does look like interacting with its right hand is the thing that I want to do. I might need to get it to drop the weapon if I want to get at its palm. I wonder how I might be able to get it to drop the weapon. Can I shoot it in the knuckles, perhaps? I should also consider stepping aside for a minute and letting my health come back. I don't think I'm getting him to drop his sword like that. I would try putting out a police uniform, yelling at him to drop the weapon. I would look like Judy Hopps. Except a fox instead of a rabbit. He would not take me seriously. A fight on the ground is unfavorable. Find a place where style has an advantage. Alright, I just gotta find a place we can climb up then. You know, between the way that this Colossus introduced itself and the arena, I'm kind of getting Dragon God vibes from Demon Souls. Yeah, it's probably for the best that you can't embed images in Twitch chat. Oh well. Can I beat it out here? There have been some Colossi where I had to, like, take them on a bit of a journey. I forget how to away with the bot. Let me actually make a note of their message so that I can blacklist that. I didn't see it, it got caught in purgatory, but it still kind of like came through, so... came through on my end. There we go, that's crouch. Mouth comes back faster if I'm crouching. I see Souls-like is kind of like... it's a label kind of like Metroidvania. Like, obviously, it's not just Metroid and Castlevania that is that type of game. But they're kind of the one that kind of, like, codified it in the public consciousness, so it's named after them. Yeah, exactly, roguelikes, or roguelites. They're derived from a game literally called Rogue. So Souls-likes are like, oh, this reminds me of Dark Souls more so than any other game. It might not be the world's most accurate shorthand, but it is one that people use. Yeah, like Metroid, Super Metroid, and I want to say Castlevania's Symphony of the Night. It kind of came out roughly around the same time, had very similar gameplay. So they kind of got portmanteaued into the genre codification. Incorrect? Fair enough. I know that they were both on Super Nintendo, that's kind of where I pulled that out of. Like, the original Metroid, yes, but like, Super Metroid kind of being the one that, like, locked it in. Symphony Light's on PS1? I thought it was on Super Nintendo. Like, you know, it got ported to basically everything, but I thought it was, like, originally on Super Nintendo. Gotcha. I haven't actually played any Castlevanias, so bear with me. Symphony Light is on my list of things to play. Okay, I need to find a way to go up. Because, like, I'm kind of just running in circles. Speaking of Souls-likes, this wrong button. Never mind, it worked. I wonder if I can get him to, like, fling me onto the walls or something. Like, grab onto its sword and then just get, like, yeeted. Or, like, maybe I could just, like, grab onto some of these walls and climb them. What are the odds that I, like, go through that? No. I cannot crouch walk. I seem ravioli scale. I would if I could. I do see these pillars in the background. I did run over there already, but, like, maybe I climb one of them? Empire Glider, also an option. We have Rivali scale at home. Did I do anything down here? Gosh, I just had a thought. Imagine trying to complete Breath of the Wild except you're playing as Wanderer instead of Link. That would actually be torturous, I think. Like, imagine that, like, you're gliding and, like, you hit, like, a side draft and water goes into, like, a 60 seconds, like, downspin where you're, like, desperately trying to cling on for dear life so that he doesn't, like, just let go of the paraglider and kill himself. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on the ground. I wonder if, like, baiting the Colossus into hitting these would do anything. Like, are they here for a reason, or... Because it wouldn't be the first Colossus that I had to bait into attacking a specific spot. I'm gonna try and bait him into doing it with this sword. Starts as Wander but grows into Link. I mean, I can kinda see the appeal there. Come on, take a swing at me. You know you wanna. Maybe I have to make him mad so he uses the sword instead of the boot. I'm having to use like a weird variant of claw grip to keep the right trigger from depressing itself. Like I'm pinching the joystick between thumb and index to move it, and then I'm using like... using like my ring finger to hold the right trigger up, while my middle finger is like on the shoulder button. Maybe he uses the sword if I'm farther away. Like this. Nope. He's totally on board with just walking up. I've got to be missing something. Well, I mean, I obviously am. People have beaten this game, therefore it's possible. There is that bridge up there. What if I poke around these ruins outside? I know he's not going to follow me, but like maybe I can find something out here. Some of these Colossi have had really weird setups, I found. I can't get the horse up here, so I can't just fling myself across. There are openings in the ruins, so like maybe I could come around the side. I don't know if that would get me up there though, that's kind of the thing. Unless there's like a path through the mountain. Taking a closer look, just in case. It does give the energy of me, like, being expected to get up onto the sides. More so than, like, entering from the top. I like how the music gets close, or gets louder as the Colossus gets closer. Implying that the Colossus is actually playing its own theme song, which is bass. I always enjoy it when characters play their own theme song. Oh, the Colossus came from over this cliff. Maybe if I jump off it, I'll accomplish something. Doesn't look to be the case. You gonna try some? If only I could jump just a little bit higher. Or like do a wall kick or something. If I could like beat him at using his sword and then like climb up onto the sword and then jump off the sword, that could maybe be a thing. Or like anything. Oh. I can work with this. Thank you for the head pats. I might have to do that on the other side. There's a handful of places I could go up. I presumably just have to find the right one. This one's shiny. want to grab anything there. Okay, what about the ones closer to the entrance? Oh. I don't think I can climb that. I don't know if I could climb any of these. Oh, now you use the sword. Can I, like, push one of these? Do I have to get him to hit something else? Once more, I feel like I'm missing something. Actually, yeah, what does he try to do to attack me if I'm up here? Does he, like, make a grab at me, or... It's like I might not have to climb further. He might just do something that opens himself up. He's lining himself up for something. Are you gonna stab me, or? Well, that's hardly sporting. Oh. Okay, he swings and he hits. Do I get him to... Yeah, Water doesn't have a cover. He just materializes arrows. Maybe I'm trying to get him to, like, break a certain number of pillars or something? Find much higher ground. Alright. Working on it. I could just get up there. Like, maybe I can have to take a swing at me here, and he, like, knocks a pillar sideways that I can climb onto. Definitely feel like I want to bait him into hitting something. Maybe like up. Like maybe the support for like this bridge thing. And then like the bridge collapses and I can like run up it. I do think I see a seam in the bridge's mesh, but that might just be PS2 rendering. Alternately, maybe I jump from here onto his body and then from his body onto something else. Oh, I do want him to hit here? I would say only give me like some information if like I'm doing the right thing, but the game's not giving me adequate feedback. Overall, I do kind of want to figure these out myself. He's turned around like, nah, I ain't dealing with you anymore. Alright, yeah, like, actually looking for a yes answer is standing here and peppering him with arrows, like, the correct way to proceed this fight? No? Okay. Maybe over here, then. I must say, at least this fight isn't, like, stagger locking me, or sun locking me, rather. Eventually he will run out of blood. Maybe I have him hit the bits that don't have as much trouble? I gathered that I wanted him to hit something with the sword. Oh, there we go. Thank you for the headphones. Now I just have to live with Wander being Wander. There we go. Yeah, I could have sworn I did bait him into swinging while I was under the arches at one point. Oh well. Let's get some of that health back. Like, imagine if, like, just taking a minute and, like, crouching and catching your breath for a minute, like, fully restored your health in real life. For profit hospitals in shambles. Yeah, like, at least I did kind of, like, end up on the right idea. I was trying it just as he just told me the answer. See, I'd have been okay with getting buried alive there. It would have been feedback from the game. Oh well. Yeah. You know, that's kind of why I didn't keep doing it, is it was like, oh, this isn't the place to go. But then I kind of came back to like, oh, maybe it's like to do with the amount of debris there. Wrong method, right solution. Get a headache, nerd. I actually had the start of a migraine today. And I was like, okay, one of the first things I'm... oh no. One of the first things I'm doing today is taking, like, extra strength headache medicine. That's a great start. I like how half the time I can't tell if the camera's like going insane because my controller's broken, or if it's because I'm playing Shadow of the Colossus. It's tending to be a combination of the two, I'm finding. Also, thank you for the headpats. Let's get back up top. Luckily, I didn't lose a lot of health in the course of getting shaken off. Get over here. Oh, there's more to it. Battered matches means that I can't go there anymore. And I've got to like jump from a side now. I could see it going either way. I'm gonna have him break the other one on purpose, just in case. Even though it might just be a waste of time. Maybe breaking the bridges is like how he loses his sword. Because I do have to get at the palm of this as well. Oh, he gets hidden vitals. What if you don't want to find the hidden vitals? Well, then your female of unspecified relation will not be resurrected. Simple as that. Oh, my bones. Come on, take a swing at me. You know you wanna. Unless this is just one that can't collapse for some reason. Or I'm standing in the wrong spot of the right part. I'm gonna try it on the other side. Oh, thank you for the hydration. You know, I really thought that I'd have a Colossus dead within the first hour, but it's looking like we're gonna go into the break having not killed this guy. We're not quite there yet, but we're on the cusp of it. I also wonder if I shouldn't just, like, go back to the area where, the area where I've already got like a way up and just like jump off the bridge that's broken. Like, what if him breaking it was like an inconvenience and not a progression? Stand for the threat? Alright. There we go. Was doing overhead? I don't think he was doing it overhead. I think he was doing a side swipe and it just wasn't doing anything. Not that you can see anything in this game, ever. Oh well. Alright, round... whichever round this is. Let's go. You know, I'm with you. Like, a lot of the fighting in Shadow of the Colossus has been, like, stand around for a really long time and wait for the Colossus to, like, do the thing that makes it able to be hurt. Looks like that didn't accomplish anything, so I guess it's just there to, like, make you waste a bunch of time getting back up. Fair enough, I suppose. Come along, John Colossus, please elevate me. John Colossus the 15th. Oh, I'm over here. Once I get back up top, I think I'm gonna have a nice break. Oh, wonder. Where would society be if you could do anything? That was not the direction to go in. I also don't have the slightest clue how I'm gonna get at its palm once the head is down. Unless the sword glowing at the joint is indicating they've got to stab him there to, like, make him drop it. Got, like, a tendon or something. That's right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom. Anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. return. Also, a random thought crossed my mind. It occurs to me that if I'd had this game as a child, I probably just would not have been able to beat it. Not because I wouldn't have been skilled enough, but because, like, when I was growing up, I was allowed to play 1 hour of video games every day. And if I ever tried to, like, go over that limit, I would get, like, harshly punished. So, like, I would have gotten to, like, this fight, let's say, and then just not been able to do it in under an hour, ever. And it just never would have gotten done. Well, that is like 20 minutes if you know what to do. I don't know about that one. Maybe you know what to do and the Colossus just, like, is totally on board with getting killed. Like, you'd also have to, like, factor in, like, load times and, like, actually physically running to the Colossus. And also just children not being particularly clever. You say decent shots, I just never get past this. In the world where I had this game as a child. Right? Now I know that the other one's on his palm. Question becomes, how do I get to his palm? Like this, perhaps? Camera, please. I'm getting staggered every single time he takes a step. This is really annoying. Alright. Like I say, I know that it's on his right palm. The question is just, how do I get there? Like I say, I presume that I jump over and stab him somewhere. The question is just being allowed to do so. Dude, you missed. You missed twice. This guy just actually sucks. Here we go. I don't know why water insists on falling off every time I jump up here for the first time. Anyway. Let's get back over here. Like I say, presumption is I get down to like his waist or whatever, hop over to his hand, stab him in like the joint or something. The sword is resonating with something over here. I just had a thought. This game could arguably be considered a precursor to games like Getting Over It and Baby Steps. It's like, I get the feeling that, like, the way that this game makes me feel is how those games make other people feel. Like, I know exactly what I want to do, but, like, the interface and the main character are fighting me at every step. Okay. Drop it, I say. It's just PS2 jank? No, I've played PS2 games. This is on a whole other level. Rose got Harry Palms. I'm not sure how to feel about that. And he's dead. Oh, thank you for the rotation and for the headphones. I have consumed the forbidden ramen. And I should be on my way to the final Colossus now. I'm glad that I didn't have to climb all the way up again to get to the palm. I got really lucky basically dropping directly into it. Alright, one to go. The Order of Console has the largest collection of objectively bad games. Finally, the last Colossus. The ritual is nearly over. Thy wish is nearly granted. But someone now stands to get in thy way. Make haste, for time is short. Yeah, I would say it's probably either PS2 simply by virtue of, like, sheer volume. Like, the PS2 library, like, eclipses, like, the second largest library by, like, an order of magnitude. Probably that or Wii, because the Wii was very much a dumping ground for shovelware. Right, straightforward. wonder if there's any fruit on that tree. Yes, there is. Switch digital-only titles. I haven't actually spent that much time in the Switch eShop, mostly because it takes a day and a half to like load or navigate through. But you might be right. Isn't this where the first Colossus was? More or less. Yeah, like this was the climbing tutorial. I feel like I probably don't actually want to go this way, by virtue of this being the first way that I went. But I gotta at least stick my nose in. If you can't process a console, I don't. Like, to me, a console is, like, a piece of hardware that's, like, completely single-purpose dedicated to, like, playing video games. Which, granted, would actually disqualify everything from, like, the PS2 onwards, because, like, they can play videos. I guess only with the primary purpose of, like, playing games. Fun fact, there were Game Boy Advance cartridges that were literally just like episodes of Pokemon. I think they produced like 3 of them and then stopped trying because nobody was behind them. It's like, oh behold, it's Game Boy Advance movie. And just nobody actually did it. They were like ruinously expensive to produce compared to like DVDs. Yep, Game Boy Camera was a thing. E-reader was also a thing. I always really wanted an e-reader as a child. It seemed like the coolest thing ever. But I was never allowed to get one. Which, on the one hand, it's like, okay, probably for the best. There's like 5 uses for the e-reader, and they're all just like Pokemon Gen 3. On the other hand, it's like really cool. And I'm not really much of a reseller, but they're like 4-digit price tag now. Also, fun fact, one guy on YouTube, I wanna say I'm a Blissey, is their username, actually reverse engineered the e-reader and figured out how to like make his own events that he would like load into the game by making like an e-reader card and swiping it. So he was able to create like legitimate event Pokemon like Jirachi and Celebi and Mew. By just like actually making in-game events. Like, he didn't modify the cartridge at all. It was entirely, like, he would swipe an e-reader card, it would read as valid, and then add content to the cartridge. In the way that e-reader vanilla does. It was super cool. Oh. What have we over here? Yeah, he also had to, like, jump through a ton of hoops to make sure that the Pokemon would, like, not trip Nintendo's Pokemon DRM. I guess you'd call it game breaks. Because, like, they were really, really weird about, like, not letting you have certain Pokemon. Like, if you got a Deoxys, for example, and it didn't, like... and it, like, didn't have, like, the right receipts, for example, it would just, like, always disobey you, as if you didn't have the right matches for it. I presume I want to go that way. There's another shrine over here. Whatever's going on over there looks really shiny. Presumably because it's, like, the climax, so they don't want you going there until you've done everything else. Oh. I despise the camera in this game, not gonna lie. Let's see if I can't find a gecko. Like you, yeah. No. Forrest, please keep going fast. Ooh, ominous weather. Is it just me, or did Aggro's front leg disappear for a second there? Not sure how I got that lost, but here we go. Like, I could have sworn I just set off from that shrine. Oh well. That thing kind of, from this distance, looks like the Mirror of Twilight. Alright. Another shrine. Nom. How to get up there. Seems to be a path there. Seems to be a jump there. I can get onto that thing by having Aggro throw me, but getting off of it requires a similar jump, so... No, I flung myself from horseback on purpose, it just never really did anything. Aggro likes to take go fast as an incredibly optional suggestion. Aggro, Aggro, please go fast. You have one job. Oh, Aggro can jump. R.I.P. horse. No, he did? No, he had landed in water. He's fine. No. It went like brick aggro, not aggro brick. Aggro's fine. Also, come to think of it, like, wouldn't a horse, like, handle hitting the water better than a human would? Because, like, they've got those hooves, so, like, they would break the surface tension in, like, 4 different places between, like, anything really critical hit the water. Aggro's fine. What swimming capabilities? Can horses not swim? I'm pretty sure horses can swim. Horses aren't known to be good swimmers. Yeah, it's fine. Like, I've fallen from higher than that into water in this game and been totally fine, so aggro's fine. We also didn't, like, verify the body, so, like... Nah, aggro's totally fine. Decent swimmers, not from 1,000 feet up. It's fine. Like I say, he landed in the water, broke his fall. He didn't, like, fall, hit the ground, and then go for a swim. He landed in the water, he's fine. The funny thing is, I'm probably moving faster than I would be if I still had aggro. That horse was allergic to doing horse things like going fast. I like how this Colossus looks kind of like a building. Getting water terminal velocity? No, that's... Oh. That's what I'm saying, though. It's like Aggro fell in hoof first, so he broke the surface tension. He's fine. And like I say, water has fallen from, like, as high or higher in gameplay and been totally fine. It's like you really can't use, like, real-world physics here. No, Aggro's totally fine. Wander, on the other hand, can't take many more hits like that. Imagine if Wander got struck by lightning right now. Not even Colossus related. Just like winding up to actually trying to call for something and then just bam, dead. I sure hope this isn't going to be another Colossus where I spend the whole time sunlocked. We do a little sneaky. Well, that was rude. I disagree with the notion that there's ever a good excuse for sunlocking the player. Like, at that point, just kill me. Given that this is the last Colossus, if this ends up running over, I might just extend stream a little bit to finish the game. I presume that I can take shots with both hands. It does feel more than a little bit lame just sitting around waiting for HP to regen, but like... my options to do otherwise are limited. You know, this game is absolutely a precursor to like... Bennett Body and Baby Steps. Like, haha, you got booped. Enjoy having, like, 5 minutes added to your playtime. Oh well. Remember to land on your neck to break falls. That's where I came up from. Right, let's wait for the health to come back. I don't need that much. That's a pretty long sprint. I wonder if I should just go for it. But the fact that, like, this trench is this wide to catch me all the way over there makes me think that I gotta run all the way over there. I see a thing here. I wonder if I meant to get up there, or if that's another place that I can fall down that sends me all the way back here. It's like, again, if you think of this game like a dead body, that feels like the sort of thing that it would do, is send you all the way back there. Reaching this guy is definitely the harder part of the fight. I mean, that's basically all of them. Oh yeah, there is a thing there. Alright. I guess I begin by climbing up this Colossus' dress. I like how it's called fencing. There's just something about that that just entertains me. I couldn't tell you why. It's like, oh, my back. Nothing shiny. Oh, I wonder if touching is gonna hurt me. Oh, yes, yes it will. I wonder if there's something that I'm missing, or if I just... There's no way I can make that jump. Okay, I'm running out of stamina. I'm gonna try and jump back to the main body. That went better than I thought it would, not gonna lie. Get the stamina back. Am I attached? No? I was about to be very upset. Dang it. Alright, I know what to do for the most part. I just have to actually do it. What if I'm not meant to jump like that? It's like, that's in the way. What if I jump from here to like a higher part on its body? Not like that. It's like it definitely like doubles over when I shank it in the shoulder, in the upper arm. Okay, where can I actually go from here? It really wants me on that other palm, but like once I'm there, I can't do much. Okay, I'm over here. Now what? What if I just stab it in the palm? I don't think that counted. Maybe need to get onto one of its fingers. Maybe I like shoot it from here? So I do want to get onto its other side. Okay, so doing that stabilizes it. But like, then what? I can't get over there. I can get it to react by doing that. It's like braced its wrist. Which I guess would mean that like I could go around the underside. Unless he does that. Okay, somehow alive. That's what I'm saying, it's like falling from things doesn't kill you in this game. Alright. We're gonna have tonight's... Normally this would be the end of the stream. We're gonna have another 5-minute break here. Instead, I'm just gonna go over until I beat this game. In the background, during the break, I'm gonna be climbing back up to where I was. You're not missing anything. Yeah, please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom, anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I returned. Yeah, it's a lot easier to know what to do next when somebody just straight up tells you what the solution is. Get stabbed. Just a little bit more stabbing. As a treat. And he's dead. Once more, the forbidden ramen. What a view. Oh, it's all the guys. It sucks to be them, I already won. Lord Amon. So they get there just as the final seal breaks. No. Also, that was a really verbose no. Ow, 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 ow. Thank you for the apples. Very delicious snacks. I appear to not have been transported back to the Shrine of Worship like I normally do. No, wait. I'm flying back, perhaps? Right, so Water's back, the sword's back. They were presumably praying for the girl to stay that. Just when we wake up at the same time as all the Shadow Men. I appear to have turned into some sort of demon. I don't believe this. So it was you after all. Have you any idea what you've done? Not only did you steal the sword and trespass upon this cursed land, you used the forbidden spell as well. To be reduced to such a sight. You were only being used. Eradicate the source of the evil. Look, he's possessed by the dead. Hurry up and do it. Ugh, now I gotta be a town guard. My blood appears to be black. It is better to put him out of his misery than to exist cursed as he is. And this guy really seems to enjoy ordering the deaths of people who haven't done anything wrong. And I'm dead. Or not. Cool, now I'm full of the forbidden sauce. And that wasn't the ancient sword. Devil May Cry reference? Is it just me, or did that sword get like way longer after the guy let go of it? He was not that long in his hands. Alright, the shadow that was inside of me is now outside of me. I like how the guy picked his sword back up, like, well, if you're not gonna use it. Thou severed our body into 16 segments for an eternity in order to seal away our power. We, Dormin, have arisen anew. He's been resurrected. We have borrowed the body of this warrior. I mean, warrior's a bit of a stretch, but go on. Place a seal over the entire shrine before it's too late. Now I am the Colossus. Uh-oh. So about them not using the ancient sword. Get squished, nerds. Ooh, I can breathe blue. That's my attack. So it seems like their plan is to like grab the ancient sword and book it. And then when they get to a safe distance, they'll probably do something to like try and put me back in the rock. Ready my horse. I like how his bracelets are vibrating. Go on, follow these. So they yoinked the sword just so they could chuck it away again. I feel like they could have left out a step there. Oh no. I'm getting poltergeisted. Alternatively, Jumanji? I've never seen Jumanji. And then Wander ends the game as he began. Falling over. Over and over. 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 He died as he lived. Not on his feet. Thank you for the hit, Nuts. I like how they didn't even break them, they just like... They're just like Gary's mod despawning them. Like, if you could have done that, why didn't you do that when you first sealed Dorman? Made it impossible to approach the temple in the first place. All of this could have been avoided. Thank you for the hydration, by the way. And the headphones. I like how they didn't even take the girl's body. They literally went to all this effort just to make sure that she stayed dead. But she lived. Also, as like a general sentiment, I would appreciate it if you didn't tell me what was coming next before it actually showed up on screen. Yeah, she lived. She was just sleeping the whole time. I like her dress. It's plain, but it's nice. It's kind of hard to tell with like all the bloom and glare, but it looks like it's got a nice texture as well. Oh, there's aggro. Yeah, I knew aggro was fine. But he lived. And all the Colossi are dead. But yeah, after this, I'm gonna go and climb to the top of the shrine. Just to say that I did. I do think it's kind of cool how it's like panning over all the dead Colossi. Like, behold, the fruits of your labor. If fruit was a euphemism for corpse, and labor was a euphemism for murder. Behold, the corpses of your murders. Did I ever go visit one of the corpses after I killed them? Not close enough to touch, but I did get told that, like, if I did, it would, like, start a time attack against them. And I was like, that sounds like something I don't want to do. Poor ungodly soul. Now no man shall ever trespass upon this place again. See, wording like that is how you get ring wraith loopholes. Should you be alive, if it's even possible to continue to exist in these sealed lands, one day, perhaps you will make atonement for what you've done. Yeah, how dare you bring back to life that girl that I murdered? I have been turned into a baby for some reason. Oh, oh dear. Did not expect that bit to be modeled. Yeah, hopefully it's just like a muscle sprain on aggro and not like a broken bone. Yeah, so aggro's fine, the girl's fine. Wander is a given definition of fine. I guess it depends on whether or not Wander like retains his memories. Because if he does, this is an incredibly undignified position to find himself in, but he's gonna be fine. If not, I don't care about the semantics. Wander is dead. This is just an unrelated baby. Yeah, it's like... I'm not sure how old Wander was. Probably like 20, 30-ish. It's like, oh boy, you get an extra 20 to 30 years of life. You just have to put up with being babied for a few of them. Speaking of babies, have fun. Okay, so she's got that Disney princess energy. I wonder if I'm supposed to recognize this bird. That might be the bird that was like following me around at certain points. It's kind of hard to say. This game runs at 512 by 448, so anything that's not like prominently in the center of the screen is really hard to make out. Or I should say it's running at 512 by 448. Like on native hardware, it might be even less than that, I'm not sure. I didn't have a CRT. Imagine if that bird just got absolutely decimated by a lightning bolt. I think the bird objects to my sense of humor. End. But which end? Yeah, sure, I'll save. Trying to worship 0. Now you can enter time attack mode by praying in front of the Colossus statue in the shrine. Interesting. You can now choose hard mode when starting a new game. How would hard mode even work? Do they just, like, make the Colossi even more obstinate? This is the opening cutscene. I guess that number on the far right is like which new game cycle I'm on. Yeah, this is just New Game Plus. Wonder is back to full health. I have retained my statistical bonuses. And I'm gonna go climb the thing now. Also, yeah, it is incredibly apparent how much of a change Wander suffered over the course of the game now that he's back to normal. Alright, just gotta find the thing. Pretty sure it was around here. Here we are. Alright, if I can't get up here with the amount of stamina that I have now, I do have a secret weapon. Is the secret weapon cheating? Yes, yes it is. Definitely feel like I'm getting closer than I did before. And I'm dead. Is there less than a chance way to get up there? I don't think so. In fact, jumping like that was like the most stamina efficient way that I could find last time I tried this. Right, Necro? Where are you? Please be faster than me going on foot for once. Alrighty. Let's see here. Please bear with me. What I'm doing is I'm looking for the value of the stamina. And I'm doing that by looking at which values have changed. And in what direction. Can I start climbing from horseback? I don't know if I can. Alright, I'm down to a bunch of potential values, but they all look a little bit weird. So it's likely that the stamina isn't stored as a 4-byte value, which is what I was first looking for. Just for fun, what happens if I do this? Nothing? Okay. This is the part where I just kind of like start throwing things at the wall and seeing like what has an effect. Hacking is fun. It's also a bit tricky when you're like, not doing it on something that's PC native. Okay, so it's none of those values. This is gonna be embarrassing if I can't find the stamina. Actually, wait, it's probably something like that. I could just look this up on YouTube, but at this point it's like, I want to do it the really pointlessly complicated way. This would also be like much easier if my stamina value was like quantified with a number. Because then I could scan for like very specific values and like very specific differences. I'm having to paint with incredibly broad strokes. give you an idea where I'm at, I'm currently looking at about 340,000 values that I'm still trying to like narrow down. And now it's down to 0, which means that none of them were that. So a lot of computers are filled with very, very many numbers. You need to get to bed now? Honestly, I'm probably just gonna give up. This isn't worth the amount of effort that it's gonna take at this point, I think. Like, don't get me wrong, this is very possible. But the amount of effort that I would have to put into this, I think is not worth it. Get it from inside? I will try it from inside. And if I can't do that, then I will just look it up on YouTube and put that up. And then I'll call it a night. From inside, you say? I guess it does make sense. It's not like the girl would have like climbed up the outside. But if you're not meant to go up the outside, then why make the outside climbable? Thinking emoji. I straight up cannot grab that. Go to the entrance, gotcha. Do you want to go all the way up, or like around the doorway? You can go up here, but I don't know if it, like, lets you out, because I'm pretty sure that the door is closed. Because I think that going this way was, like, one of the first things that I did. And the door was just, like, closed. But I'll give it a shot. Final Fantasy VII Disc 1. Oh yeah, climbing the stairs on Shinra. I played a little bit of Final Fantasy VII, I never played through the whole thing. I do want to fix that at some point. But I did climb the stairs. I enjoyed the banter. I enjoyed the banter on the way up between the party members. Yeah, we get up here and the door is just closed. Maybe I can scoot around a little bit more though. Some parkour skills, get somewhere. Yeah, I don't think I can get anywhere from here. So I'm just gonna look up the thing on YouTube, just for closure. Looking for something that is for the PS2 version. Everything is like clickbait titled. Like the long quest for the last secret. Okay, this one's half an hour long. I decline. That one's IGN, I don't want to put that one up. Alright, you know what? We saw it in the ending. If you want to look it up, just do, like, on YouTube, Shadow of the Colossus, Secret Garden. I don't feel like trying to sort through clickbait, Divine Bun. I'm sorry. Have a good night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be on Friday. The game is going to be on Epic. As for what I'm doing next Wednesday, I haven't decided. I hope you have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Good night.